soon as the countdown stops.
Hello, Cleantechers. I am Mike Casey. I'm the founder of Tigercomm, the national clean economy marketing and public affairs firm. I have the honor today of hosting the third convening of Cleantech's leading podcast hosts. As many of you know, we host a quarterly Cleantech Editors Roundtable series, and we're convening our fifth episode on Monday of that. I'll have something up in LinkedIn later today, but while the full-time editors have breadth of view, I think you'll find our podcaster panelists have a depth of view, because their shows delve into companies, leaders, and trends at a really deep look. And I think you're going to really like the panelists that we have here. So I'll introduce them, and we'll bring them on. I want to do a special hat to my friend and fellow traveler, Nico Johnson, who just does a beautiful job of handling all the tech for this. So we'd like to bring on Marie Burgquist of the What's Up podcast, John Farrell of Local Energy Rules, Nico Johnson, of course, of Suncast, and Tim Montague of the Clean Power Hour, Bill Nussey of the Freeing Energy Podcast, and Josh Porter of the Solar Coaster. So I want to welcome all of you. Welcome back. It's so good to have you. All right.
Good to see you again, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
Good to be here.
Good. All right, we are, in case you haven't noticed, nearing the end of 2021. And my question for all of you is, how would you describe how Cleantech did this year? Bill?
Yeah, I think the punchline is that we missed a lot of expectations. I think that as we started this year, even in the summer, there was a lot of big hope for what the U.S. government would do, and a lot of big hope for what would come out of COP26. Definitely some movement on the policy side, but not nearly as much as we wanted. But, everyone that knows me, I'm a small scale energy guy, a local energy guy, and I think there's some exciting things happening. Solar App Plus really made it out, which I'm excited about. It's going to get some traction. But I think if we look back, the number one thing this year is going to be remembered for is 2021 is the year that the world noticed that climate change is happening. You go from Louisiana, Texas, Kentucky last week. The scientists can argue just how much was based on climate change, but to the average person on the street, this is the evidence that I think will start turning heads and changing minds in the coming years. 2021 started it.
All right, Josh Porter. Aloha from Hawaii.
Aloha, everybody. Good to see you all again. So nice to be here. Look, I have my head in the sand a bit right now working on this film project, and we're just about wrapped up. But what I can say is that there's amazing technology kind of emerging day by day. There's, we just finished up our EV piece, and, thinking about the potential of something like the F-150 and for the electrification of transpo, when you have the best-selling vehicle of all time, everyone's eyeing kind of like really excitedly. I mean, there's just a lot of amazing things happening. Right around the corner, we got CES. CES, the largest thing to hit Vegas annually, just expanded from 1 million to 1.4 million square feet of coverage. And, a lot of it's sustainability, a lot of it's autonomous vehicles, a lot of it's the space that we've been kind of touching on in these other environments that are specifically energy. So I feel like, renewables and clean tech have kind of come to the mainstream, and they're about to have their big voice in the upcoming year. That's my opinion.
Marie Burgquist, your verdict on 2021.
Yeah, I would say 2021 is best summarized as a slingshot. there was so many oh crap moments that pushed clean tech backwards. So you're looking at Texas, you're looking at Illinois specifics of the ITC closing out, or I'm sorry, not ITC, the SREC program closing out at the beginning of the year. And now as we're pushing closer and closer within weeks into 2022, we're seeing us kind of catapult forward with new incentives, the Build Back Better getting passed and more execution on that. So I would really see 2021 as a slingshot for clean tech.
All right, Nico Johnson, you are up, my friend.
You know, a lot of the folks that I deal with are in our coaching and then even in the communications of the Suncast have been raising money. Bill and I talked about this when we hung out earlier this year, and I've never, even in the aughts when people were raising stupid money, I've never seen a fervid pitch like we see right now. And I've said to everybody who will listen, if you want to raise money, now is the time. Even our seasoned friends who have been raising money for a long time have said, I've never seen the kind of stupid money coming into clean tech that I'm seeing right now. And for me, that's a good sign. The other thing that we've talked about in the previous roundtable and that we talk about a lot, Mike, is you and I, is this whole idea that ESG is no longer a fringe idea. It's a core investment catalyst. And if you listen to the episode we published today of our hydrogen podcast, which is a mini series we're running, Biraj Borkataria, a top 10 oil and gas analyst, said that it is table stakes right now, especially for the fossil fuel industry, to figure out ESG, because Wall Street and all across Europe, it is a requirement from the boardroom moving forward.
All right, Tim Montague.
Well, yeah, I think 2021 is actually a pretty awesome year for clean tech. We see EVs getting traction now. We see SpaceX going to Mars, and that's a good thing for humanity. That's not necessarily clean tech, but it is tech, and it's important for humanity to do this. Only 1% of our GDP, mind you. I'm not saying let's spend real money, but the thing that I'm so excited about, as Marie pointed out, is that Illinois is back on track for our RPS, greatly expanded RPS, and this is huge for the Midwest, and we're now the sixth largest solar market in the United States when you look at pre-construction, and the Midwest is the largest solar market now in the United States. It's bigger than the Southwest. Texas is the number one market, and Texas is huge, and I'm super pumped for what's going on in Texas. And Virginia is the number 3 market in the U.S. or number 2 market. It's just amazing how things hit these tipping points and then boom. So 2021, great year.
Well, yeah, let's not get carried away in Virginia. We just had elections here, and I don't know that that's going to bode well, but I do appreciate your good wishes. Tim, my follow-up question is SpaceX a good thing for clean economy because Elon Musk was separated from Earth, or because it returned him to Earth?
Elon does plan to die on Mars. I do not.
Okay. All right, I got it. All right, saving the best for last, Mr. Farrell. Welcome to this motley crew that gathers once a quarter. I wish I was traveled in better company, but you'll have to slum it with the rest of us. So welcome.
Thank you for that generous introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm seeing 3 things in 2021. One is actually something just in the news in the last month. Some really exciting things at the community level. Community choice aggregation communities in California pooled together, just did a $2 billion long-term energy acquisition. Some really exciting ways that we're seeing communities be able to drive where clean energy is going to be built. I'm also really excited to see Ithaca, New York, basically get a sustainability director who actually has a background in finance and put up some real money in a partnership with Block Power to try to decarbonize buildings. I think that's pretty exciting. In the policy side of things, Vibrant Clean Energy, their study showing we can save $500 billion on our decarbonization strategies for the electric grid if we do local energy. I think that's huge. We've been telling people that for a decade, and it's great to have some real significant numbers and modeling behind that. And then the last thing I just have to say is California's got this bipolar thing going on. They have this great regulatory proceeding looking at essentially how do we divorce the utility from the grid and put some independent manager in charge of it. And then just earlier this week, they're saying, let's destroy the solar market in California. So I don't know. Overall, pretty good. California, let's figure it out.
Marie, I think you're glad you told me to bring John on, so we had at least one person of substance on the call. I think that's lifted up our boats. That's good.
I did say that.
All right. Excellent. All right. A long form journalist 10 years from now writes a definitive look back piece at President Biden's impact on decarbonizing the U.S. economy. Next week, you leave that reporter guidance and a time vault to open in 10 years. What directions would you give her? Josh Porter.
Are you kidding? You're really going to start with me on that one?
We already had the substance guy go. I want the form guy.
I was a student in the classroom, like, don't pick me first. Don't pick me first.
Oh, gosh.
I vote for Nico on that one. Nico, why don't you jump in and rock and roll with that?
You're going to have to kick him $20 to come save you, but I'll go, hey, Mr. Johnson, please save Mr. Porter. He's clearly looking for he wants to do a rugby pass.
To save both of us, and because I'm better on my feet than Josh, can you restate the question? This will teach Mike. You can't throw all these questions at us right at the beginning.
Have you taken our media relations seminar? That's a very good bump and run. That's excellent. Okay, so the question is: next week you are going to leave directions in a time vault for a reporter 10 years from now to write the verdict on Joe Biden's impact on decarbonizing the U.S. economy. What directions would you give to her?
What directions give to her to write on the impact of Biden on the U.S. decarbonization efforts? Focus on how Build Back Better carved out specific elements of energy storage, direct pay, and decarbonizing the hard to abate sectors like steel, incentivized, hard to elevate, hard to launch or spark industries like green hydrogen by basically fomenting and building up the electrolyzer industry, the hardest part. Highlight the ability to bring home, I think that's onshoring more of our electric vehicle economy, spurring it despite now global patriarch of Mars, Elon Musk's dismissal and deletion of that in the Build Back Better. He's served to elevate electric vehicle charging and electric vehicle subsidies to the level that in the 10 years necessary, we completely eradicated ICE vehicles from the U.S. market, despite many objections in the farming community and Texas writ large. I don't know how I did there because I've never coached anyone writing an article, but hope I did all right.
Thanks, all right, Nico. Mr. Nussey, you're next because you may not be a man of substance like Mr. Farrell, but you're playing one in your book. So
I did pretend to do a couple of years worth of research, including interviewing Mr. Farrell. So, I think there's two things that I would say that this reporter should think about looking back. One is the reporter is going to write an article about how it is we, as a country and as a world, missed what was so unbelievably obvious right in front of us. Having the worst severe weather we've seen, at least observably, subjectively ever, and yet all the politicians in Washington, D.C. are unable to line up. We can't even get half of them to line up to do what's incredibly obvious and financially beneficial, presumably because of ideology and party lines. I don't know. The second thing, and again, you guys expect me to say stuff like this, they're going to also write back and say, back then in 2021 and 2022, everybody's head was stuck in big think, right? If we're going to fix this, the only thing we can do is make gigantic $100 billion moves and make gigantic policy changes and huge proclamations, and there's nothing else we can do. And the reporter is going to write about the fact that there is a tremendous range of things that can be done immediately by everyday people. And if they had just done tiny, minor little changes in policy, like the fact that you can get everywhere in the United States, you can put a satellite dish for TV on your roof. It's federally regulated that you have the right to do that. But my homeowners association won't let me put up solar panels. So little things like that are teeny to fix. 10 years we'll look back and say, what took you so long? Why didn't you see it in 2021? So if I sound negative today, there's a lot of reason to be happy about what happened this year. And I am a believer in the technology, but I do think this is going to be the year where the reporter is going to say, you guys we're just stuck in the wrong thinking. And it's really obvious in hindsight.
All right, John, you're going to have to go next to sort of give Marie and Josh a little bit more time to thumb something down on their phones before we call on them. But we can start the drum roll because we are coming for you, Burgquist. All right, John.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah, I mean, clearly Google two things. Build Back Better, did it pass? We don't know yet. And maybe the key person to Google there is Joe Manchin. What the hell did he end up doing? Did we manage to get past him? Because most of the best part of the agenda around clean energy is still locked up in that Build Back Better bill. There is some great stuff around EV infrastructure. There's some great stuff about transmission expansion that was in the infrastructure bill, but these other pieces are crucially important. And particularly, I'd add just one other thing is what was the impact of the Justice 40 component of all of the federal action, but at the federal agency level, federal legislation? Did it actually result in addressing some of the racial and economic inequalities in the energy system? That's what it set out to do. Was it successful? I don't know. I'd point to that.
All right, Tim Montague, do I call on Marie or Josh next? Which one goes on the griddle? So they blame you, not me.
Oh, he's ready. Josh is ready.
He looks totally ready. All right, Mr. Porter, are you done with are you done angsting? Are you ready to give your legions of listeners an answer?
No angst here. It just hit me out of the blue with that crazily worded question that was about 5 sentences long. So, hey, look, Nico, thank you for that, by the way. One of the things that I came out of this summer with was how much potential there was with wind. With offshore wind. Right here behind me, you see the GE Haliade X. That's a 14 meg, right? Wind turbine. It's a remarkable piece of kit out of GE. There's a prototype in Rotterdam right now. And what's happening in the Bedford community, Massachusetts, what's happening in the offshore wind area off of Martha's Vineyard, that is directly tied to Biden. Directly tied to the opportunity for different leases that can be now opened in other areas, not just I forget the offshore wind zone lease name, but there's a handful of projects being penciled out now there that are looking like they actually are really viable. So we have the technology, we have the political will, we have the kind of acceptance and the precedent of it being approved on the case of Vineyard Wind and the 62 GE Haliade X's. But then we also have other spaces around the country where that type of power can really is a multiple of our base load domestically. So I think that there's tremendous opportunity with offshore wind. I'm excited to see not just anchored, but also floating. NREL just did a study on Oahu. Oahu's got basically zero chance of hitting its 100% renewable energy mandate without something like that, because we just don't have the space to deploy all that solar out there. So if we're talking about Biden, years in the future and trying to understand if he did was effective or not, I'd say, definitely this is an area that's going to make a huge impact. There you go.
So, Nico, this is proof that we should never play poker with Josh Porter because he pretended like he had no answer. He made you look bad. We went around, and then he walloped us all with this really killer soundbite. All right, Mr. Montague, please go forward so we can just build Marie's angst before we leave her for last. All right.
Well, I want to riff on something that Bill said. The little things I think are really what matter, right? The growing number of states that are getting into community solar and dual use solar is a growing phenomenon. I've been looking at land use and the footprint of sheep grazing versus what we need in solar to completely green the grid are about the same amount of real estate, about 1% of the landscape. And that's all we need is 1% of the landscape to go to solar. The other piece of advice I have for this reporter is bring your life raft, because if you live in Florida, you're going to be underwater. The bad news is the ice caps are going to melt. And we're just hanging in there on CO2 levels, right? We're not making a dent in the atmosphere yet, right? We are greening the grid, but the atmosphere is getting worse. And so we have to really get serious about this. And Dems, Republicans, I don't care who you are in DC, you are just not really being serious about this transition yet.
All right, Marie, we waited.
I know.
Best for last.
I was going to pretend like I was glitching, but I think I'm ready to respond. So I'm going to hit it at Marketing 101. If they want a successful story, to start it out as $1 trillion has been spent, or use the buzzword clickbait $1 trillion. That will obviously gain a lot of attention. But the number one thing, I'm hoping that we will find in 10 years, Build Back Better came to light and principles were turned into practices and actually executed on. But the most important thing is to don't talk to the representatives, don't talk to the senators, talk to the people that this affects most. That is low income, that is environmental justice folks. Get them involved in the conversation, because those are the people that a lot of this affects, and those are the people that don't have access, and those are the people that are going to help us get to 100% renewables.
All right, good. Same reporter, same time vault. She's got story 2, the impact of the COP treaty talks and the COP treaty agreements on global decarbonization. What direction would you give to her on that story? All right, Mr. Nussey, you're the world traveler.
I think there's, I hate to say this again, because I don't want to sound gloom and doom. I'm a very optimistic person, but I think in 10 years, we're going to have a couple of island nations that are largely underwater. Even if people take serious action, I think that's going to be a global story. And I think they're going to want to go back to the roots of how it happened. The other thing I really was positive about in COP26, I've railed on the fact that methane is a serious greenhouse gas, and it just got no attention. Carbon dioxide got the limelight, but methane came to the stage and showed its own, and there was some policy and some commitments, and attention was paid to it. And we need to think about methane. So the reporter is going to hopefully be writing about how, for the first time, the world looked at methane, said we got to cut it back. We need to measure it. The satellites are going up. We're getting real good data at a country and kilometer level data on methane. So I think that's going to take a big chunk out of the climate problem, but it's still a nit in terms of what we need to do, but at least we're focusing on it. And 10 years of success, hopefully on that particular item, will be a good news story.
Bill, what you said reminded me, I wrote a piece a while back, tongue in cheek, where I call for deep accountability when it comes to crimes against future generations. And I thought that the first coral atoll in the Maldives that threatens to go underwater, that's where we should put Darren Woods, Rex Tillerson, and Lee Raymond together to practice their survival skills and crafting a raft to see if they could get off. Otherwise, enjoy the coconut husks, right?
Gallows humor here.
For sure. All right. Tim Montague, what do you say about COP and its impact on the global decarbonization push? Any impact, some impact, a lot of impact?
Yeah, I guess some impact. I'm no expert on COP. I honestly have not paid too much attention. I'm more focused on what's going on at the state and the country level, and that, I mean, there's so many good things happening. There's so much money, as Nico pointed out, flowing into clean tech now. Capitalism is driving the energy transition. Here in Illinois, we're closing a fleet of coal plants owned by Vistra and converting them to solar and battery storage. And this phenomenon is happening nationwide and globally. And it's not just coal, it's nuclear and gas, natural gas power plants. And I'm just super excited for this trend. And it's being driven by big business. It's not being driven by environmental regulations, really. It's more about the core economics of energy and how solar, wind, and batteries are the cheapest source of energy. And that means profits for big business. It means profits for contractors and entrepreneurs and technologists, and it means savings in consumers' pockets. And that is just a wonderful thing. The energy transition is actually really good for humanity. So what are we waiting for? Let's go.
Well, Josh Porter, you're next because you live in an island nation.
Yeah, I was going to default to that, actually. I haven't followed COP26 that much, just the basic headlines. And so when I really think about, what is impacting us right now, you look at Hawaii, for example, we just had a blizzard warning. Okay. I'll say it again. Hawaii had a blizzard warning. My daughter was in Big Island doing a track event for states, and I'll just throw that in there. My daughter made states. And she's running through like a mutter, basically under Mauna Kea that is snowing. Right. And so and we just had during that entire period, massive flooding, states of disaster, and all of this is happening right here. And it's undeniable that we're seeing impacts from climate change just in our daily lives. So, I feel like there's, we're past this notion of can politicians kind of, forgive my negativity, but can they agree to some lofty goals or not? And we just need to continue to, really engage with, I kind of tend to agree with Tim that there's, capitalism is kind of behind the renewable energy revolution and this kind of shift. And that's the thing that I tend to hold close to and be enthusiastic about. If that's what's happening for real, and if the business that we get to do on a day-by-day basis is actually driving this shift in our energy economy, then I feel like there's some hope. But I think we're already going to be damaged significantly in places like the Maldives and all these environments. I know people from these environments, and they're going to be in terrible shape, and we're going to see climate refugees, and that's horrible. But hopefully we can stave off the worst effects, and if we continue to work hard now, that's all I can say, really.
All right, John Farrell.
Well, I'm more a man of domestic than international substance, but Tim threw me a lifeline there in talking about the way that the economy is, like companies are moving forward with solutions. I've always seen the energy transition as a bottom up and not a top down thing. So it's great that the world leaders want to meet and try to come to some agreements and some commitments. But, the transition started because the United States in the 70s broke open competition in the electricity system and got some of the first wind turbines built. It happened because the Germans said, let's form cooperatives and set up a structure to pay people to put solar onto the grid system, create a manufacturing base, create a strategy for people to make those investments when, businesses weren't willing to do that, especially the incumbents. And I think that's what this is really about is, can the disruptors be given free rein to do what they need to do to give people the opportunity to put solar on their homes, to aggregate customers and to do demand response, to do exciting things with electric vehicles, those little roving storage batteries. So that's what I'm hopeful for, but I don't see that happening at COP. And I think it's really going to be more up at the national and the subnational level where we see the innovation happening. And that's what we really need to unleash.
All right, Marie Burgquist.
Yeah, I would have to agree with what John was saying, that it's definitely a bottom up scenario, but there has to be so much collaborative effort among the entire globe. All these phenomenons, all these anomalies are becoming norms at this point, like a blizzard warning in Hawaii. Who would have thought? Or Tim, talking about Florida being underwater. That's a true possibility that could end up happening. So there has to be collaborative efforts, and there has to be collaborative efforts so that what, say, the US does isn't ended up getting offset by whatever somebody's doing across the nation. The biggest thing, again, is collaborating.
All right, Nico Johnson, last word on this question. COP or not the COP?
So I think that most of us followed it loosely and not as closely as, unfortunately, our dear friend Julia Piper, who couldn't be on today. She would have given us her view from the front lines. I followed through the lens of the Council on Foreign Relations, and so I have read a little bit on some of the writing that they've done. The goal of keeping to 1.5 degrees C, basically above pre-industrial levels. The Glasgow, what I think is being called the Glasgow Climate Pact now, is predicting we have to fall below. Actually, I think the agreement was fall below 45% by 2030. So, in speaking to this reporter, the question that she's probably writing about is, did we do it? Like, if we look back, what failed? I think, as I said in a previous podcast, what failed to get us there. One of the things that for me was a huge disappointment, not the successes of the agreement, because a lot of this is just sort of grandstanding, and you've got billionaires flying in on their jet planes to talk about reducing their carbon footprint. The failure, in my view, was a lack of commitment globally, to not just phase down the unabated coal power, which is kind of how they languaged it, and which is the single largest source of global temperature rise in the world, but a failure to commit to remove coal as a power generation source and to help countries financially who can't do so. So one of the things that everybody sort of touted was the United States and China are now sort of playing together, agreeing to work on climate despite the obvious diplomatic rifts. But we just didn't align on where we need to be globally on the single largest emitter of carbon emissions, coal. And the second is we just are falling far too short on the funding challenge to fund the kind of climate action that the Maldives and many other islands need, but even countries like India who and most of China still depending on fossil fuel by and large, coal, and they didn't agree globally as a community to censure Joe Manchin. So if those things would have happened, I feel like we would have probably made some traction.
Well, I know I sleep better at night knowing that Joe Manchin's $500,000 a year side hustle in coal waste is in a blind trust. I don't know if it makes you guys comfort, but I just feel so much better about it. All right. There is a person on this podcast who has a pamphlet out, a new pamphlet, and it's in the form of a book. And I thought we would ask Bill Nussey to tell us about his book and where people can get a copy of it.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all have been supportive, very supportive. So I started this journey a couple of years ago, trying to find the biggest business opportunity in the world, having been in other industries like the internet and computers, digital marketing. And I came across clean energy. And as I got into it, I was excited we could save the world, give 1 billion people electricity that they don't have it. But I ran into this horrible political policy mess, and I got depressed. And I thought, you know what? We're never going to make progress. It's going to take 3 or 4 decades. And as I was working, and I think about all this stuff, these giant, big things like giant transmission projects and interconnection delays and climate policy at COP26 in the U.S. It's like a giant traffic jam where everyone is stuck, honking at each other, trying to move forward inch by inch, not making any progress. And so I kind of discovered this express lane, and I want to tell people about it. And the express lane is called local energy. And I did not know that the patron saint of local energy would be on this video today. So total props, shout out to ILSR and John Farrell. John, the term local energy, which I credit you for popularizing in an interview we did, you said you didn't create it, but you popularized it. I found it because of you. It's mentioned 400 times in the book. So this is a book about local energy. You guys are talking about bottoms up. In the title of the book, it's actually use the term outside in, but the same idea. It's about how all the energy systems, we're going to make a lot of progress using small scale systems, way more than anybody thinks. And so, I think about it's an entrepreneur's perspective. And I interviewed a lot of people, 320 people all over the world. 60 of them are in the book. And there's this famous entrepreneur that said, I'm only going to really expect change when something's 10 times better. And so what John and I call local energy, guess what? If you put up a large scale solar project and you put up one on your roof, the one on the roof is going to create 10 times more jobs. If you talk about how long it's going to take to put up a giant solar or wind project, not even starting about offshore wind, it's going to be 10 times faster to put up a small scale solar project. And you can do them all in parallel. And here's the best one of all. I was reading an editorial about the net metering debacle, the train wreck in California that came out this week. And even the lovers of net metering are saying, but of course, the problem is it's so much cheaper to build these large scale systems. It costs, $3 a watt to put it on my roof, and I can do it for $1 a watt in the in the large scale stuff. So of course, large scale is the only way to go because it's cheaper. I don't know about you guys where you live, but when they put up large scale solar plants outside of where I live, my electricity bill doesn't go down. If it's cheaper, I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's cheaper for the utility, their profits go up. I don't know. But I can tell you when I put solar on my roof, my bill went down immediately. So it's the math that I have. And as far as I'm concerned as a voter and the whole social compact, when they invented the regulatory monopoly, it is actually cheaper. Local energy is cheaper. And John has some great work on that years ago that was really seminal for me. So it's not just 10 times cheaper. It's 1,000,000 times. It's infinitely cheaper to build it your own than it is to put it in large scale. So I captured all this in the book, wrapped it with some fun stories. I, visited huts in Africa and talked about people's lives that were changed. And I went to the headquarters of Jinko and interviewed their executives and all over the world. finding out where this is going. And I think the punchline is that there's a story, there's an express lane that we can move a lot faster that people need to know about. And I'm just adding my voice to this this idea that John started, and hopefully in 10 years, the reporters that we've been talking about look back and say, wow, wish we had realized this more fully in 2021 than we did. Thank goodness Nussey and Farrell are out there getting the story out.
Well, Bill, I do, in all seriousness, I want to congratulate you. Books are massive undertakings. I believe your book right now is the #1 book on energy on the New York Times bestseller list. So congratulations on that.
Wow.
And
I don't think so, but I'll take it. Thank you.
How can people get the book? Just want to make sure.
Easy way to get it is go to Amazon.com.
All right.
We got it. And for people like me, there's an audiobook version. We found a great narrator, wonderful audiobook. It's not me. And it's super easy to digest. So every form, hardback, softcover.
John Farrell's going to jump in with how to get it from your local bookstore.
Hey, thank you, Nico. I really appreciate it. Indiebound.com. Find your local bookstore.
There you go. What is indiebound.com, right?
Good. All right. Well, I will say, for those of you who've been talking about COP, I actually have been to 2 of them. And if you find paint drying really exciting, you will love COPs. Imagine the U.S. Senate, which is one of the biggest BS factories in the world, but expand it from 100 BSers to 193 BSers and give everyone a veto power, put 6 or 7 oil producing ringers in the mix. That's what you have at COP. So I think someone described it as the best dysfunctional option that we have. And I think that kind of sums up what the
Tell us
COPs
what you
are.
really think. I think you're beating around the bush, Mike. Tell us, is this your honest opinion here? Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Okay, so thank you and congratulations on that book.
Thank
Here's
you.
a question. Forecast for 2022. We're going to bring that up, but before then, if you lost any sense of climate urgency, and you could be the CEO, and all you cared about was share price and money coming into your pocket, would you want to be the head of a large solar company right now, or the head of a large natural gas fracking company? Which would you prefer to be, just from a purely financial standpoint?
That's easy.
All right, Bill.
I mean, the fracking company is going to make a crap load more money. It's, the solar is a super thin margin business. The margins are being compressed. I mean, these 20, 30-year contracts, and the only reason they can get done is because they're going to go to merchant sales after the PPA is done. These are crazy deals. Thank God we're having them. Thank God people are signing up for them. But fracking is an incredibly profitable industry. It goes up and down, but there's some great books on how much money and how many billionaires have been minted from fracking. So if you have a purely economic view, fracking is the way to go. And that's something that we've got to address. And that's why this oil and gas lobby has so much momentum behind it, because there's just a ton of money and a lot of people don't want to give it up.
Mike, was there a time horizon?
Yeah, 5 years. How's that? Let's
Okay.
just throw 5 years. All right, what do you say, John? Which CEO chair would you want to sit in?
Ooh, good question. Trying to think how I dodged like Josh did earlier. I'm gonna take Bill's word.
Josh just threw up his hands like a drowning man and cried for Nico to come save him. I think it's been done once. I don't think you can do it again.
Hey, just to be clear, I would never, ever take a job running a fracking company, but you had to call it. You said who's going to make the most money, and I wanted to answer because I know the answer to that. But I would absolutely run a solar company any day of the week. I have a solar company. That's the only way to wake up in the morning and feel good about yourself.
All right.
I have an outside the box answer to this question.
Jump in, Mr. Montague, because John is looking for saviors.
I think I want to own Ethereum and a blockchain DAO-based company. Could be a solar company, but it's got to be based on Ethereum and smart contracts and DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations. This is going to sweep our economy. We don't see it yet. Only 10% of Americans know anything about blockchain and crypto, but it is not the evil empire. It is the future. And so if you're in the energy business, there's a huge opportunity to leverage W3, as we call it, and it is going to be a huge wealth generating machine, even more so than solar, wind, and storage. Of course, solar, wind, and storage are great money makers. I don't know if anybody has read Jeremy Rifkin's The Green New Deal, but he has done a crap ton of research globally about when you invest in green infrastructure, what is the ROI for society? And it's a 3x. For every dollar in, you get 3 out. So that is just a very good investment. I don't know. Fracking scares the crap out of me. It causes earthquakes. There's going to be stranded assets. So I can't go there.
All right, Mr. Farrell, back to you. You got your reprieve.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a third option, which is say that I would like to be a monopoly utility executive, because there's nothing so good as to keep your profit as having captive customers and not having to compete in a real market. So that's where I would be comfortable. And I'd love to see what a monopoly utility could do when they change the culture and really try to compete in this market instead of trying to hold it back. But that's where the safety is. Or talk to Warren Buffett. He knows all about it.
Isn't it a sweet deal? So the utilities position on net metering is, hey, unlike any other business in America, if you're going to buy less of my product, you need to pay me. I believe there's a term for that in New Jersey, and I don't know that it's legally admissible, but there is a term for that.
There's only really 3 regulated monopoly industries in the United States: alcohol, gambling, and electricity. So just saying, it's an interesting trend.
All right, Marie Burgquist, which corner office do you want for your 5-year fattening of the pocketbook? You want to be a fracker, or you want to be head of a global solar company?
Yeah, I want to agree with John again that it's going to be the utility sitting in that seat.
All right, Josh Porter.
All right, so thanks for bringing in utility, because that's an interesting area. And out here we have a utility, Hico, that is that has won a number of awards from SEPA, and it's considered just this really kind of progressive utility. And but even in that environment, it is pretty sluggish in taking in. Well, we lost net metering in 2015 as an example, right? So, but I think that utilities are going to be these kind of brokers of the shift towards renewable energies, and that's actually an exciting and potentially profitable space to be in. So, if I were to choose something, it'd probably be somewhere in that environment. But I think the big question is, like, what is the most profitable dirty industry? It sounds like what you're kind of asking on the back end of this, and then how do the people that run those institutions sleep at night? I think I'm hearing that on the back end of this question too, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, are people just kind of running it to the end and saying, "Hey, I'm going to buy my own safe little space outside, in some safe place that isn't destroyed by the climate"? I mean, I think that's kind of what is on the back end of this question. I don't know the answer to that.
It is an interesting look into the mindset. Like I remember someone said that Saudi Aramco's express philosophy is, we're going to pull the very last drop of oil out of the earth that gets sold. That's unapologetically, that's our thing. And you think to yourself, well, what's the end game on that? Where is that going to, if we're all in the same boat, do you think that one corner is going to be drier than the other? It kind of escapes me, but your point's well taken. Mr. Johnson, which corner office would you like?
So I think that I would take, to everyone else's point, if it's a question of maximizing shareholder value, and we're only looking at the next 5 years, it's hard to argue for just the pure play solar company. But as someone who got into this industry because I couldn't possibly, like Nussey said, sit in the corner office of a fracking or fossil fuel company, if I were to take the shareholders' best interest, I would take the solar company, because over the next 5 years, I would establish that solar company as a hyper profitable 15 to 20-year venture, and focused on the kinds of partnerships with the monopoly utilities and the rest of the oil and gas industry that the fracking company just simply can't obtain. So yeah, they'll stack, they won't stack sats, unfortunately, Tim, but they'll stack billions of dollars, perhaps over the next 5 years. The solar executives, if you look at companies like Intersect Power that just raised $2.5 billion to build gigantic solar farms connected to hydrogen electrolyzers, are going to be creating the wealth and the value in the not too distant future. I mean, we are not seeing small sums of money going towards even still centralized utility scale solar and localized hydrogen production for nothing. These folks are not gambling. There's a reason why the renewable industry has been called useful idiots of the fossil fuel industry where hydrogen is concerned. And I personally would say I'll be one of those useful idiots and go put my chips on the table for building large scale solar to drive down the cost of an electron to the cheapest possible point, because that's the only way we're going to be able to create scalable gigawatt scale or gigaton scale hydrogen production and localized production of electricity for hard to abate industry. So if we actually want to be good stewards long term and good stewards of our shareholders' dollars, the renewable energy company CEO writ large is doing a much better job at maximizing shareholder profits on the long term. And I think that if you don't see that over the next 5 years as an investor, then you probably should be, then you're one and the same with the kind of folks that would start a fracking company.
All right. Last question from me, and then we'll just go do round robins here. But perhaps what a lot of listeners have tuned in to hear from you, predictions for next year. Do you have a prediction? And are there some trends that you are going to be paying attention to? Tim Montague.
Well, it's the solar and decade that we're in. It's all about solar and storage, solar and green hydrogen, solar and wind. And I love how it's so tangible in so many communities around the country and in my own backyard here. And I want to shine a light on what Marie said in her opening comments about environmental justice. You know, low and middle income people are vastly more impacted by the environmental bads that we humans have invented, like power plants, like refineries, like landfills. Okay. And these bads are now being converted to goods. Okay. My closed municipal landfill here in Urbana is now a solar farm, making clean power for low and middle income people who want to subscribe to a community solar project. My local buses are being powered by green hydrogen made from electricity from a solar farm across the street from the mass transit district by an electrolyzer. Literally, green hydrogen is happening in Urbana, Illinois now and driving public transit. This is happening. It's real. Now, is it at scale? No, but it's real. And the fleet of Vistra coal plants that is closing is just the tip of the iceberg. That one company is closing 7 gigawatts of coal power around the country. This is 1 gigawatt here in Illinois that's going to go bye-bye. I am launching an initiative, okay, in Q2 to shut down Prairie State, which is the largest CO2 emitter here in Illinois. This is a ginormous mine-to-mouth coal plant. And I'm going to use a Dow to do it. So if you're interested in W3, come talk to me and let's shut down Prairie State.
Nice.
Right.
That's what Dows should be used for right there.
Like it. All right, John Farrell, what is your prediction for 2022?
I think, and I am excited about this, that we're going to see more of this conversation about who ought to operate the electric grid. That, you know, and can we continue to dodge this notion about leaving someone with a conflict of interest in charge of it? You got all of this great tech out there. You got all this investment in clean tech, and it gets hampered by utilities that have a particular business model. You know, I'd be interested in hearing what Josh has to say about Hawaii, right? They just switched to performance-based incentives for the utility there. First state in the country that's really changed the way the monopoly does business. I'm interested in seeing, does that work? Or is it really about, do we got to pull a utility out of there entirely? Do we need them to separate their operation of the grid from their investment side, from their power plant side, from their infrastructure side, to make sure that they're not getting in the way anymore? To me, that's, you know, the essential question. And I think one that we're going to see addressed a lot more in 2022.
Josh, that sounds like a setup for you. Your prediction, maybe an answer to John and your prediction.
Yeah. Yeah, so we just did a show with a year ago now, Hawaii Energy Conference 2021, with Jenny Potter, Public Utilities Commissioner, that had a big hand in driving that, and she gave us the checkpoints and the milestones and where we'll be able to actually evaluate the success of performance-based regulation. So we'll be updating that over time, and so I really am also really kind of excited to see where that goes. For 2022, some of the things that I get excited about, and I jotted them down here so I didn't do this to Nico again, but. We were talking about the grid edge, about solar and batteries, about the small scale projects. One of the things that I saw that really excited me was the discussion happening at a place like Emerge Alliance in Washington, D.C. about the hybridization of the grid and about microgrids and this opportunity for this hockey stick moment. And then here in Hawaii, an environment where a lot of things are happening early, there are companies like Tedpec's Holu Ho, who were recently acquired. I forget the name of the acquisition, the company, but a publicly traded company, but they're out there building microgrids, fully funded microgrids for this white space of workforce housing. So you have this grid edge development of solar plus batteries happening for 200 workforce families, right? That's an exciting thing to see. I think we're going to see all of that grid edge development. It's just becoming profitable. There's real value in that. Also, these places, they have ancillary benefits outside of the stacking of the batteries, right? I think what's called, again, grid stacking or value stacking, right? You have all the potential grid services and opportunities within that. But think about this. These environments, like Maui Brewing Company is another example that I constantly talk about. This environment here can act as a FEMA location when we have power outages, right? So there's direct benefit to the community. There's a strong ROI for companies like Maui Brewing Company to bring this solar plus battery, and we just finished a PVT or photovoltaic thermal hybridization system to amplify their power generation capabilities on the microgrid. I mean, there's just so much happening at the grid edge. And then where does that go? Now we start thinking about things like smart cities, right? Whoa, you got Pennsation in Colorado. You got what's happening with Sony and Mount Fuji. You have, these are not just kind of like highfalutin ideas anymore. It's not science fiction. We're kind of laying the groundwork for this to actually happen. So I would say that grid edge development, the hybridization of the grid, the grid of grids, that excites me for 2022. I think we're very close to that taking off and there's more companies I could mention. Also, one last thing before I step out of this, long duration storage, right? We did a show with, I'm pointing to Kauai right now, Kauai Island Utility Cooperative. We did a show with David Bissell, president, for this last video project we were doing, and they have a fully approved PSH, pump storage hydro project, the megawatt level that will take their entire island to 100% renewable energies. And you see the same kind of thing, long duration storage happening at like hydrogen, right? Right now, the largest hydrogen facility in the United States of America before Plug does its business is at the Wells facility in Washington. I can't remember the name of it. It's a great name of a town out there, but they got 5 megawatt electrolyzer going in right now, and that's long duration storage. And you have a different landscape, you have different needs in these different geographies. Somewhere like Kauai, somewhere like Washington, where you have hydropower, where like it's the cheapest electricity in the country at 2.3 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas Kauai is like 40 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So there's just two different ball games, but there's long duration storage is going to play a huge role in helping us kind of, green the grid, so to speak, and the hybridization of the grid. Those are the things I'm excited about for 2022, and there's a bunch of other stuff. And I have a question for everybody when we're ready.
All right, Josh, it's not lost on us that you named a brewery instead of like a celery juice bar as a disaster recovery location. It was not lost on any of it. Just a shout out to you. Okay. Marie, predictions for 2022.
Yeah, it was somewhat covered by Josh, and then Tim mentioned it in his feedback for 2022. And I don't know if this is the broadly known term, but the demand response, which is pulling utilities having access to pulling energy from people's storage if the grid were to go down. So we've all mentioned what's going on in California right now. And a lot of the reasoning per the article I read from Yahoo was that they're overhauling the net metering program so that during peak demand times, people are utilizing their storage instead of relying on the grid. And so I see that continually, and as more solar systems are installed and as more solar systems are being paired with storage, as the grid goes down and in times of emergency, I do see that being implemented or that being a viable option for utilities to then pull from individual storage systems to get the grid back up.
Bill Nussey, something tells me you're going to point out a small scale local solution.
I'm not.
All right.
I'm not. It's gonna grow incrementally. I think 2022 is not going to be the year. Might be 2023. But I'll tell you what 2020, in my opinion, what 2022 is going to be. 3 things: storage, and storage. I think it's happening now. And as I say in my book, storage is not just a better solution. It takes the grid management from arithmetic to calculus. And in doing so, the complexity goes up tenfold. The opportunity to make money for all, from utilities to innovators is enormous. And I think storage, whether it's, I love the Energy Vault moving giant bricks up and down. I love Form Energy and their iron air batteries, and the short-term storage, lithium ion, iron phosphate, all this stuff. It is happening at a rate that's coming together. It's going to be so cheap. Peaker plants. Who said that we're probably never going to build another natural gas peaker plant in the United States? So I think storage is going to play a huge role. And as it rolls out, people are going to quit complaining so much about the intermittency of solar and wind. I come from the software industry. I mean, solving intermittency is an easy problem. We solve problems like that Monday by 9:30 in the morning. There's a lot of infrastructure, safety, policy involved. I'm not trying to, but technically that's an easy problem. Policy-wise, it's hard. And I want to just, while I have the mic, I want to just have one wish for 2022 because it's completely not going to happen. But I wish. So I spent 1,000 hours probably looking at all the numbers, price forecast, Lazard forecast. There's this thing I learned in business school called discounted cash flow or net present value. It's this crazy thing that money and value is created by 2 things. Cash flows over time, how much cash flow, and how long that cash flow lasts. And I am completely flummoxed and I cannot understand. So maybe Josh, with your picture, you can explain it to me, but I do not understand anyone advocating for nuclear or for offshore wind or any of these things. They don't make any economic sense to me at all. And so maybe they do. And honest to God, I'd love to learn it because I want them to work. I think the world needs them, but they make no economic sense. By the time we could build any amount of offshore wind, solar and batteries will be 1/3 of the price they are today. So I'd love to have that conversation eclipse all the political baloney and just say, let's look at the numbers realistically. And it's not hard. Everyone agrees on the numbers. Everyone agrees that offshore wind is not going to get below 6 cents a kilowatt hour. And so explain to me how that works. And so that would be my wish for 2022. And it's a genuine request for anyone who's listening or any of you guys to step me through the numbers and explain to me why those things are still seriously considered. Because I want to be behind them. I love them, but I just don't see the numbers sketching out at all. Not even close.
Well, we got 2 minutes left in the hours. Nico, can I give to you the prediction for 2022 last word, and then maybe we'll get a round robin question in.
Yeah, absolutely. My wish, I'll borrow Nussey there, his term. My wish would be that the clean energy actors would get our act together and collectively lobby better than we do right now.
Amen.
Yes.
Say it louder for the people in the back, Reverend.
I mean, it's pathetic what we do right now that we call lobbying. So, and it's not for lack of trying. I think we just need we need more cohesion as an industry. I don't mean any ill will towards the folks at SIA or SEPA or ACP at all. I just think that generally as an industry, we just don't have our shit together and don't know how to get behind the organizations that are doing the work. So that'd be my wish. But on the order of, I think that the rest of you were very, very eloquent. I've created a relatively short list of things. So I think the big breakout next year will be that Enphase. I'm going to predict Enphase stock to 800 on the back of their EV and storage business units, which are wildly profitable and are their biggest focus. They are by far the company that's doing the most sort of quiet investment and acquisition that I've seen in the industry. I think that community solar is going to exceed the C&I sector of our industry. It was referred to as the 4th vertical. I think it's going to take over C&I solar in the U.S. in terms of total megawatts installed. And yes, I'm recording, sweetie. Home studios. I think if you guys are following along on the green hydrogen series, which I would encourage everybody to listen to, I personally think that green hydrogen is going to really gain a lot of attention in 2022. The hydrogen economy is a real thing that I changed my mind around. Swedish startup H2 Green Steel and Iberdrola just announced a 1 gigawatt plant at the beginning of this month. They announced this, that they're going to build focused on greening the steel industry in Europe. I think we're going to see our first, sorry about that. I think we're going to see our first gigawatt scale project announced here in the United States. I just added to my list, thanks to Tim Montague, that I think a Dow will be used for the first time ever to shut down a fossil fuel plant. And my final prediction for 2022 is that the Suncast Podcast Network will be the #1 place for you to find your clean energy economy information.
Boom! Throws down, drops the mic on the on the competitive challenge. All right. Well, folks, we are at the bottom of the hour, and I want to thank all of you for joining us for the 3rd episode of this. We're going to be back next quarter with this crew. They're great, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in to listen to this, both live and recorded. And I just want to thank the podcasters, not only for being on, but for the work that you do. I mean, I don't think any of you are doing this because you're getting rich podcasting. Just saying. And I think you're doing it because though you have jobs and other income streams, you're doing this because you really care about getting this economy on a more sustainable footing. And I think your perspectives are so valuable. And I think as clean economy gets bigger, your role becomes more and more important. So just from me to you, thank you. I just really appreciate the work you're doing. And I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in and listening to us. And we're going to be back in a quarter. So
Thanks for
with
having
that,
us, man.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Take care. Bye now.